Hello and welcome to the Fall Star Fantasy Podcast with your hosts Cameron and Josh. This week's episode, we're going to be talking about Week 12 and in the NFL, and looking forward to Week 13. But before I get into that, I have a very tragic announcement. It's not the fact that I lost the matchup this week. It is that our guest Sam could not be with us today. He was so excited to be on there. We were so excited to have him on here, but then last second he went all Clark Kent on us and he had to go save the world as Superman. So Sam couldn't be here tonight, but we're going to get him on before the season ends. I promise you that. Well, let's go ahead. Before we jump into that, sorry, Josh, how are you doing? Because I just talked for like 2 minutes straight.
I'm doing all right. Was worried you were going to forget me there.
I even have in the show notes, it says say hi to Josh too. I almost forgot to do that, and I literally read that and went, oh yeah, my co-host. That is kind of important.
I mean, I understand I beat you and you're still a little salty, but that's a bit extreme.
Yeah, and just for that, we're going to skip the first matchup here because we don't need to talk about
I
how
know.
Travis Etienne put up point 0.3 points in a must-win game, in a game that he was healthy. He went out with an ankle injury, and then they said during the game that he was healthy, but he would not be back in because they want to play it safe. And I hate them for that. That is so absolutely heartbreaking. I'm so happy he's not injured because my entire team revolves around the fact that Antonio Gibson, Travis Etienne, I think they're going to have very, very strong finishes now. But if he was injured, I would be in a lot of trouble. But the guy that I am most disappointed with is AJ Brown. Josh, talk to me about why we both hate AJ Brown right now.
For me, he's had a slump. Like his last few weeks have been a little bit rough. No, earlier this week he was sick, so I'm not sure if that played any role to it, or the fact that much did the Eagles rush for 300, 400, 500 yards.
Something insane, 300 yards, I want to say. Yeah.
So they didn't need to throw, so it might just been one of those games. And sad for you, because he did just enough for me to beat you. I was down by 9. He caught that touchdown, and that sealed the game.
Yeah, last 3 weeks he has been wide receiver 93, wide receiver 46, and wide receiver 32. And it's so upsetting because if he didn't score that touchdown, as you can see, I would have won. He said he lost 8 pounds over food sickness, I believe is what it was, or being some kind of sick over the
Shit.
last week. He said he lost 8 pounds, yet decided to play and just had to ruin me. And I am not a fan of AJ Brown right now, but a guy I am a fan of is Trevor Lawrence, who put up an awesome 25 points in a game that I said was going to be a good matchup for him. I'm really happy about that. So, uh,
He looked good that last drive.
yeah, he really did. That was a game-winning drive that you really needed Trevor Lawrence to show that he was worth that number one overall pick, and I think he did that. I'm excited to see what the guy does in the future. But before anyone crowns him as the number one dynasty QB or something like that, this is a guy who is now the QB 11 on the season in a year that has just been completely up and down with injuries. So be careful. Trevor Lawrence has looked great, but he may not be the guy that is just going to win you every single year like a Justin Herbert or a Lamar Jackson. But anything else you wanted to add with this matchup? I feel like I've talked enough about us.
Rashad White actually had a good outing now when he finally got all the workload, so he's just stay hurt Leonard Fournette so I can have another running back at least for one more week.
Yeah, Leonard Fournette missing the game with an injury, as we'll talk about with Ethan's matchup. But Keyshawn Vaughn was playing the Rashad White role in this game, and Rashad White was playing the Leonard Fournette. So we'll see what happens when he comes back. Will it be a take over the backfield, or will they split it? But we'll go ahead and move into the next matchup here as we had Sam versus Preston. Sam, I wanted to shout him out. He won by 8 points, keeping himself alive in that playoff race as he is now moving to 5-7 off the back of a fantastic performance from Josh Allen and Amon-Ra St. Brown there as his, I would say, his two team captains.
Yeah, that'd be a good way to put it.
On the other side of the matchup, though, we had Preston, who despite the fact Ramondre Stevenson has been an absolute beast of an RB1, and DeAndre Hopkins has yet to disappoint this season when he's played. It just wasn't enough for him this week, and he moves to 4-8. I'm not sure if he's technically out of playoffs yet. I think I have a note on that later, but we'll get into that. Josh, anyone here jump out to you immediately on these two teams?
Curtis Samuel had an awful game. I'm not sure if it's one of those he had a lot of targets, just didn't catch him, or if Taylor Heineke just didn't throw it his way at all. It might be concerning moving forward. He's usually a pretty decent play for PPR, but if this is something to expect more often with Atlanta, who has a okay defense, maybe slightly above average, that might be worrying.
Actually, I think Atlanta has one of the worst defenses, if I remember correctly, other
I
than
wasn't
AJ
sure.
Terrell. Now, maybe Terrell ended up on Samuel for a number of plays and locked him down, but really disappointing everywhere from the Commanders. I mean, 9.3 from McLaurin, 1.3 from AJ Brown. As you can see there, Antonio Gibson 8.4, but I think that's because Brian Robinson put up something like 20 something points, but
Yeah.
that may have had something to do with it. The guy who pops out to me though here is Evan Ingram, 1.4 points, and everyone who's been on the Evan Ingram bandwagon, I know you've definitely heard me say some good things about Evan Ingram on this podcast, but he's a very interesting player. But in a game where they're forced to throw and they want to throw and they are throwing, he still only ends up with one catch, and that's definitely not good from him there. But I think that's just what the tight end position is. Outside of Travis Kelce, everyone else is dog shit. Yes, I'm including Mark Andrews and George Kittle. Those guys have been injured all the time over the last few years. Mark Andrews missing a ton of time this year. George Kittle doing his thing every single year to get injured. But little extra hate there on the other tight end as everyone but Kelce is bad. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
I'm glad I have Kelsey.
Yeah, I'm still a little salty, but we'll get into Billy's matchup later as Chris put the hurt on Bandon this week. He clearly did not like Bandon's suggestion for the waiver weapons last week because he decided he was going to put up 60 points, beat him by 60 points and a little under that. Complete stomp there. Was it disappointing for Bandon or was it a domination from Chris?
Just more domination from Chris. I mean, Josh Jacobs put up 48 points. Bandon had some players that did well. Obviously, Damian Harris going out early as he did, that definitely hurt Bandon's case.
Mic off.
But he scored enough to where he might have a shot against most
Mic
other
on.
people this week. So, I won't necessarily say disappointing, maybe below average for Bandon, but for Chris, his running backs are scary if they play like this for the rest of the season.
Yeah, definitely interesting there. I mean, James Conner and Josh Jacobs both finally balling out and seriously balling out. Actually, I take it back. Josh Jacobs has been great, but James Conner really coming into his own again in this offense like we've seen before, but they weren't able to do it against the Chargers, who have a horrible rush defense, and the Cardinals still lost. Definitely some panic there from Cardinals fans, but that's what we're that's about where we're at with the Cardinals at this point. And just like I said, George Kittle, 5.6 points. Everyone but Kelsey's going to disappoint you from now and then. We got to go and just accept that that's going to be bad. But I kind of like the strategy from Chris. 3 points from Taysom Hill. Just might as well go for a long shot. If you're going to win some games, you got to be able to take some risks. And he was putting them out there. Same with an injured Juju. So.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely an interesting matchup here. The last person I wanted to highlight was DK Metcalf putting up 20 points on the Raiders, but in a game that they lost, I'm still pretty happy with that from DK Metcalf. Geno Smith wasn't looking his best, wasn't looking like that MVP candidate, but he was still able to get the ball slinging a bit and was able to get some great yards and I believe a couple touchdowns. So
Correct.
Interesting match there. Good to see that DK Metcalf can still put up a lot of points and a lot of yards. So, moving on to the matchup here that breaks my heart the most, as Billy was defeated by the number 12 team there from Jaden, and I gotta give Jaden some props. When you get to last place It's just usually like, I'm going to start anybody. I really don't care. And sometimes that methodology will make you start Dalton Schultz, who puts up 19.1 points, and Derek Carr, who's been terrible, puts up 20.8 points. And the Dolphins' defense will put up 18 points. Really, just everybody from Jaden just absolutely balling out and crushing Billy's dreams.
Other than Donovan People Jones.
Other than Donovan Peoples-Jones, he was definitely a disappointment there. But Josh, talk to me about the Colts, because I see two Colts players here who both put up high double digit, teens, the teens points in this game that they were able to get, or they were able to take the L, against the Steelers defense, who I thought was pretty good.
Yeah, this one definitely surprised me. I'm not sure if it's just all of a sudden they're remembering how to play football again now that they have a new head coach. Maybe somehow Jeff Saturday is a genius other than time management. Um, this one definitely surprised me. Jonathan Taylor, he's finally starting to find the end zone again, so that definitely helps him. And Michael Pittman is finally learning how to catch the football, so that definitely helps him.
Yeah, Pittman putting up zero point 0.3 more points than Jonathan Taylor. It's still, we haven't seen the first overall pick Jonathan Taylor that we wanted to, but really most running backs so far this season have been pretty disappointing. So can't really fault him there too much. But other side of this matchup, Damian Pierce 4.6 points, just absolutely disappointing from Damian Pierce the last few weeks. That guy has really not been great this season after that great start that he had.
Let's see his stat, and this is before contact. He has -6 rushing yards on his last 15 attempts or something like that.
Yeah, that
So
is not
it
good.
helps if he can at least get to the line of scrimmage before getting touched by someone. And it's kind of hard to get yards when you get tackled in your backfield every play.
Yeah, from week 3 to week 10, he was an RB1 or 2 in every single game. And week 2, he was an RB29. So he was the RB29. So still pretty high up there. But since then, the last 2 weeks, he's been RB45 and the RB53. Definitely not good things there. He's really just not been able to get anything done on the ground, even though he has been pretty decent in the pass catching work. So, a little concern there from Damian Pierce. I think we're starting to see him kind of a little bit being that Cordell Patterson, a running back who can catch the ball in a bad offense. And, that's just kind of where we're at with those two. Last
Exactly.
question I had here. Now, you traded Travis Kelsey for Kadarius Toney, Raheem Mostert, and Dawson Knox about 2 weeks ago. You got Kelsey in this trade. And I want to ask you, how many points did Billy get from those three players in this week?
Well, considering how I only see one of them in his lineup, that's 3.7. And if I remember correctly, the other two are hurt for this
The other
process.
two are both hurt, yes, and 0 points from them both. So a total of 3.7 points. I think the Kelsey trade looking a little strong for you, but we'll go ahead and move on to the next matchup here, one that Brandon was able to get the win versus Kyler, and really a downward trend there from Kyler as he's put up 117 points despite, once again, and I feel like I'm saying this every single week about Kyler's team, the Chargers players are doing well and everyone else is not.
Yeah. Um, DJ Moore had a good week. TJ Hawkins had a good week. The rest of them forgot how to play football, I guess.
Yeah, it's been a little disappointing there. On the other side of the matchup, though, Miles Sanders getting it done on the ground. He had 21 rushing attempts for 143 yards and 2 touchdowns. Absolutely incredible job there from the Eagles, like we talked about earlier.
Very impressive game. He looked good.
Yeah, Miles Sanders really was coming into his own there, and I think the people who have been drafting Miles Sanders really been like, okay, let me just get this value guy who's probably going to be the starter in the late rounds and the running backs, and we'll see what he does. And I think he's really showing what he does. The last guy I wanted to talk about in this match was Kirk Cousins put up 22 points in the Patriots. And I remember going into that Thursday night game, and I even told my family, I said, you're not going to want to watch this game. It's going to be a good defense in the New England Patriots versus a good offense on the Vikings, but then you're going to see a bad defense from the Vikings against a bad offense on the Patriots. So really, only every other drive is going to be interesting, but that's not what it was at all.
It was a surprisingly entertaining game. I only had time to watch the first half, unfortunately, so I missed a good chunk of it. But
That is funny because I
first
only
half,
watched the second half.
first half was definitely very entertaining. It was one of those I was like, wait a minute, England can have an offense?
Yeah, Mac Jones was really slinging it out there, showing like, yeah, I am still the first round pick that I was last year, and really doing a good job there. Now, wait, I just mentioned Mac Jones and how he was playing pretty well, but does Mac Jones potentially then, if you're needing a quarterback, does he have some potential value as a starter if he's going to be throwing some passes?
I mean, it depends on the matchup because if New England could have their way, they wouldn't really throw too much. So last year, where there was a game where he threw or something like that. So if they could, they'd run it every play. So to me, it depends on the matchup. If they can get ahead early, and it's one of those type of matchups, don't start him. But if it's one of those, it might end up like a shootout, kind of against like Minnesota. Worth a shot if you need a starter.
Yeah, that concludes that matchup. The last matchup that we have here is Malachi versus Ethan, and Ethan doing an incredible job there, putting up 0 points from his starting running back Leonard Fournette, especially when he had Brian Robinson on the bench who put up 20.5 points. So Malachi definitely appreciative of the number two team in Ethan, letting him get the win there because I can't really say either team here did that great of a job this week.
Yeah, I was watching the games with Malachi for a good chunk of the day. He was definitely complaining about the entire games for his players because they had at one point I think everyone but like one person had 5 points. But he was definitely complaining about that, but he did just enough to beat Ethan where his tight end had nothing and he didn't realize Leonard Fournette was out.
Yeah, little question mark there from Ethan. On the other side, or sorry, on that side though, Lamar Jackson having a good game again, putting up 23 points in a game where they were throwing a lot, but all of Lamar Jackson's receivers couldn't seem to catch us. We'll talk about later. Are you worried that Lamar, without any good weapons, is really just not going to be able to put up this amount of points again this season? Or is this okay? We know we can do it on the ground.
It depends on the matchup. For some reason, he forgot how to run, is what it looks like half the time, or at least from the clips I've seen. I haven't watched a Ravens game this year. Every time it's like there is an avenue for you to run. I thought you were a running quarterback. Why aren't you running here? I'm not sure if it's him trying to prove the haters wrong, proving that he is actually a quarterback and trying to run as little as possible, or I don't know what's wrong, but definitely not the Lamar Jackson we've seen in the past. So depending on the matchup, it might be risky to start him.
Yeah, just looking at it right now, it looks like he's averaging about 10 rush attempts per game, which is a little on the low side for him considering the MVP year that they had. But this week he put up 89 rush yards. Last week it was 31. The week before that, 82. Then it was 43, 59, 77. So somewhere between 70 and 80 yards. That's a big difference in fantasy points because 4 points is a big deal. Whether that is on the ground through the air doesn't matter. Either way, you want the points.
Exactly.
Last guy I want to talk about here was Amari Cooper. Put up 16.4 games in Jacoby Brissett's last game as the starter. Jacoby wasn't the greatest pick, but Amari Cooper putting up almost exactly his projected. Are you worried at all about Amari Cooper now that Deshaun Watson is supposed to start?
Maybe for the first week because they haven't built that connection, but I imagine in the future it'll be okay. Personally, I'm still hoping that Deshaun Watson breaks a femur, but
Absolutely.
it should be okay. And for fantasy playing, just Why does it have to be on the Browns? Amari Cooper's not that bad of a guy. Get him on a decent team, please.
Yeah, imagine what he could do on a team like the Cowboys with one of those elite offenses. That'd just be really something to see.
Would be.
Yeah. Last guy to talk about here, Mike Evans, 5.1 points in a game that they were needing to throw, but he just wasn't able to get it done. And next week they're playing the Saints. And as we know, Marshawn Lattimore has been destroying that matchup throughout both their careers. Would you be benching Mike, or let me ask this. Would you rather start Mike Evans? Let's say it's a DFS thing and they're both the same amount of money. So Mike Evans or Amari Cooper? So Mike Evans in the bad matchup or Amari Cooper with the bad quarterback? You got to pick one of them.
Give me Amari Cooper. In this case, like you said, against Marshawn Lattimore, Evans doesn't have a good track record, and Evans has normally been a down the field kind of play guy. And Brady's getting a little bit older. He's having a little bit harder time getting it down there. At least that's what it looks like when I do watch him play. Or he's just really in love with Chris Godwin at this point. I'm not sure which one it is. So give me Amari Cooper in that case, but just barely.
There you go. I think I would also take Cooper, but honestly, I expect both of them to have down weeks, and I kind of hope that as I am not a Browns fan. But here we go with the standings. I am now 7-5. Malachi 7-5. 7-5, and Josh, I believe one more game would guarantee you first place. As I think we have 3 games left in the season. Ethan is not that far behind, though he would have to win out, and you would have to lose out for you to finish second. I'm not really sure if that
Yeah.
would be an advantage or not for you, but definitely a close race here for playoffs.
Yeah, for me, I think considering how I'm 100 points ahead at this point, I have more or less locked in for the one at this point. So take a miracle for Ethan. It's definitely getting interesting though. Ethan's team has, well, you see it there. He's on a 2-loss streak. His team is very much hurt. He has lost a lot of his star power that helped him early in the season. So if it's one of those, he continues to lose some of these games, he might even miss out on the playoffs completely.
Yeah, now I want to talk about who do you think is going to finish with the obviously I'm going to finish with the third spot here. I don't know if I can catch Ethan. I'm going to try. Maybe I finish number 2. Either way I'll be playing the third place spot. It'll probably be me and Ethan that playoffs. There's no way I miss out, but who do you think is going to finish with that 4th spot as Malachi and Chris are both 7-5. Bandon a game out behind them at 6-6, and then a couple people have 5-7. And Preston and Cat aren't technically eliminated yet.
For me, I'm thinking 4 is actually going to be Chris. I was kind of looking at the schedules. He has an easier schedule. Him and Malachi are very close in points. So it might come down to that because I can see them both winning all their games moving forward. But with that kind of star players that Chris has, and I was talking to him about it earlier, as long as he can survive this week against Brandon, he should be making it.
It is really going to come down to it. I am so excited to see what we're going to be looking at even next week, as obviously you're going to lose, Josh, for sure. You can't have an undefeated season, and I'm going to be winning and taking that 2 spot from Ethan just so we can play each other in the playoffs anyways. But I want to know what our players have to think. So if you guys have a take on this and you think you're making the playoffs, go ahead and leave us a comment or hit us up on the Discord because I want to know who you guys think is going to make playoffs. But we'll go ahead here into the waiver weapons discussion. And I will start off with a heartbreaker as Demarcus Robinson was the wide receiver 91 on the week. Absolutely terrible. I think he put up something like 1 point, maybe 2 points. Absolutely terrible waiver weapon, especially because he dropped two touchdown passes on separate drives. Hit him in the hands, dropped both of them. So, good process, wrong player. Am I right with that, Josh?
Process was there. It's just very unfortunate on that one.
Yeah, we
Yes,
got to see
very
Chiefs
over.
Demarcus Robinson come back, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, so slightly better, but not by much. Gotcha.
Talk about your guy there though, Foster Moreau.
Unfortunately, I was unable to watch this game, so I can't exactly say how he did other than looking at his how he finished. But I mean, the process was there. Seattle, just in general, the AFC, and not AFC, NFC West are not great against tight ends other than 49ers. Process was there, and he managed to hit for me. So I am back up to where if I didn't have the Ryan Tannehill situation, who knows? I could have been tied with you for hits and misses, but we're tied on the misses at least. So
Yeah, giving you that pass in that 1 week. Foster Moreau was catches for 33 yards and a touchdown. And actually, I have it wrong. He finishes a tight end 9. And it got passed in Monday night when I was making this graphic. So my bad there. But he was able to get that touchdown, which is just what you need from a tight end. And Jacoby Brissett moving another miss onto the guest board as Ben there did not work out despite the fact that he actually looked pretty decent. I think he put up 14, 16 points. But QB 21 on the week, definitely not a good one. So we're going to go ahead and jump to this week and hope that I do better. And we even got a special one from Sam. But we'll start here with Josh's. Go ahead.
man, a myth, a legend, Mike White. So, just in case you've been sleeping under a rock for the last 2 years, when this guy has had to come into play, he's only done good things. Ignore the one game where he did really bad, please. But for the most part, he's been very good. Is this partially for the memes? Maybe a little bit, but I actually do think he's going to do well. Can't remember who the Jets are playing off the top of my head, but it looked like it was a decent matchup for him.
They're playing the Vikings.
There we go. They're going to have to throw a lot, and this guy can throw. I think it was like 303 last week, and last year he had a game where he threw for 404 or something like that. So
Yeah,
definitely one of
22
those players.
completions for 315 yards and 3 touchdowns. So
There you go. Mike White. Start him if you need a QB this week, because they're going to have to try to play catch up with the Vikings offense.
something I love about Mike White is that they are immediately in the week after that they're playing the Bills. Obviously, a bad matchup there, but then it's Detroit, Jacksonville, Seattle for the fantasy playoffs. So some
Hmm.
good matchups I would want to be targeting. So if he can have a good week here, and I don't see any reason why he can't. Maybe a guy you hold on to for the playoffs if you're wanting a QB. Maybe you're one of those deeper leagues.
Hmm.
We'll go ahead and jump on here then to Sam's waiver weapon as he chose Isaiah McKenzie because he clearly did not see me pick Isaiah McKenzie 2 weeks ago and how he was a stinker for me. But last week he was very good as we got to see on the Thanksgiving game. I think we talked about that on last week's episode already. But Isaiah McKenzie, Sam's choice there. Did he have anything else to add other than the fact that he's short and doesn't weigh a lot?
He thinks it's just going to be more of a PPR typing game. They're up against New England, so they have a good pass rush. Josh Allen will be able to stay in the pocket long enough to where he can target Gabe Davis every single play. So Kenzie should be able to get some more targets that way.
Yeah, I don't think there's anyone who wants to beat the Bills more than the Patriots. So they're going to want to try and stop Josh Allen's running, which means that he's going to give it to the dump off, which is the Isaiah McKenzie slot role. Good pick there from Sam. And we'll go into the perfect waiver weapon. And it is a guy who I believe has 1 touchdown so far this season. I'll have to double check that one. But Kenny Pickett is going to be my selection for this week's waiver weapon, as I am just really liking his matchup this week against the Atlanta defense, who we mentioned earlier was a bottom defense. But it's not the fact that they are bad against the pass, it's because they're very bad against the run. Last week and about 2 weeks ago against the Saints, we really got to see Kenny Pickett using the legs that he was really excelling with in college. Last week he had 6 rushes for 32 yards against the Saints. In week 10 he had 8 rushes for 51 yards, and the week before that 7 for 37. Now right now he only has 3 passing touchdowns on the season, but Atlanta I'm hoping is going to be a bottom matchup for that, and I think that the time is going to be coming because Deontay Johnson and George Pickens fans they are definitely begging for some touchdowns to come through the air, as those players have been absolutely embarrassing to keep on your roster this season. But I believe in Kenny Pickett. I think he'll live up to his draft type, and he's going to be a QB1 this week.
Definitely a lot further than I am on that one. I would not choose him for my favorite weapon.
Yeah, Mike White was the safe option. Is that what you're saying?
And the meme option.
All right. Well, before we get out of here, we have a mailbag question from our own Billy Carr. Will Carr 15 on Twitter. Would you take the Chiefs to finish first in the AFC? I believe he's talking about regular season. Obviously, we have 3 weeks until fantasy playoffs, but there is still 5 weeks, 6 weeks left in the NFL season. So tons of time for those teams that are behind the Chiefs to catch up to them.
Yeah, to me, the answer is simple. Do we win this week? If the Chiefs win this week, the rest of their season in comparison is pretty easy. They should win all those games. Really, the only one I can see is given maybe a hard time is Seattle, but if we can win this week, then I think we will win the AFC. We'll have the first seed. Outside of that, though, we may need a little bit of help from the Jets.
Yeah, the Chiefs with remaining opponent win percentage. So if you average the win percentage of all of their remaining opponents, is a win percentage of .371, which is dead last in the league, meaning the Chiefs had the easiest strength of schedule before the end of the season. And before people complain, saying the NFL is making it easy for the Chiefs, it was the play Broncos twice, the Raiders and the Texans, who still had to play them in the division that were up against the AFC South, and then of course the Bengals they're playing this Sunday. Teams that were not supposed to be easy at the start of the year are looking quite easy, but I may end up eating my words. But at the time when Billy asked that, I said I would take the field, and I am regretting already saying that, and they haven't even played. I think there's a decent chance the Chiefs lose on Sunday, but even if they did, that would move them to 9-3, tying them with potentially the Dolphins and the Bills if they both win. But after that, Ravens 7-4, Bengals would be 8-4, Titans 7-4, and Jets 7-4. AFC East is going to eat itself alive, and I don't think anyone's going to come out of there unscathed in the rest of the season. So I'm feeling pretty good, actually, about the Chiefs finishing first in the AFC. Josh, you said you agreed. Would you still be taking them if they were currently tied with the Dolphins and the Bills at 8-3?
So Bills have the tiebreaker over us, so that would be a one disadvantage. We haven't played the Dolphins, so we can't say anything about that. Sure, a tiebreaker would work between those. Um, actually think it's going to be the Dolphins who win the East. So as long as we can keep the same record as them, we do have a shot. Again, I don't know off the top of my head how that tiebreaker works. So yeah, I take the Chiefs on that one.
Okay, pretty interesting. I think it is going to get very bloody, very quickly in the East conferences as AFC East. Dolphins are 8-3, Bills are 8-3, Jets are 7-4, so a game behind them, and a game behind them is the Patriots at 6-5. Yes, all four teams currently have a positive win percentage, and they're all four in the same division. And then on the NFC side, Eagles 10-1, Cowboys 8-3, Giants 7-4, Commanders 7-5. It's crazy in the East right now, and it is ugly in the South, but no need to worry about that as we're going to be close to this week's episode. Josh, do you have anything else to add before we get out of here?
It is so weird hearing all those teams have winning records.
Yes, it is very wild. I definitely don't think anyone, even the biggest Giants fans, expected this good of a season so far, but we got to see them close it out because right now they are on a losing streak.
Correct. And outside of that, go Chiefs.
Go Chiefs. All right. Well, that concludes this week's episode of the Fall Start Fantasy Podcast. Thank you all so much for listening. You can find us on Twitter at Josh Newshafer and at Cameron's Ego. Make sure to go and follow Sam. Guilt him into being on the podcast next week or as soon as he is available. I believe finals are coming up soon for all of those college students, so hopefully we're going to have time to get those guys on the show here after that as the holiday season is coming up. But we'll be back next week before week 13 begins, so be on the lookout for our next episode so you can be ready for the ball is snapped. Thank you and goodbye.